we have a new British record to celebrate. And not, I should stress, a deferred Olympic result from Paris, which would have been nice. It's a new political record, I'm afraid, and I'm not sure it's worth celebrating. It's the fastest MP to jump ship in modern political history. Step forward, former Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who's written her way into the record books with an excoriating resignation statement to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Duffield has condemned Starmer for accepting gifts worth more than £100,000, including clothing, glasses, accommodation, all paid for by the Labour peer Lord Ali, while whipping MPs to back his decision to axe winter fuel payments to pensioners. And Duffield writes, "The sleaze, nepotism and apparent avarice are off the scale. I'm so ashamed of what you and your inner circle have done to tarnish and humiliate our once proud party, forcing a vote on winter fuel payments to make many older people iller and colder while you and your favourite colleagues enjoy free family trips to events most people would have to save hard for. Why are you not showing even the slightest embarrassment?" It emerged on Friday that Starmer received a further £16,000 of clothing donations from Wahid Ali. In total, I think gifted clothes are something like 32 grand. And as I understand it, this is all within the rules. You know, the taxpayer hasn't been billed a penny for this, and the same papers screaming at Labour for the clothes gate. They barely said a word when the previous Prime Minister billed us £40 million for his personal helicopter. But Duffield wasn't finished. As Prime Minister, your managerial style and technocratic approach and lack of basic politics and political instincts have come crashing down us as a party after we worked so hard, promised so much, and waited 14 long years to be mandated by the British public to return to power. I mean, Rosie Duffield, hang on a minute. The share of the vote may have been unimpressive, but Keir Starmer has just steered Labour to its best election result in a generation after bringing the party back from its worst election result in 2019. The Telegraph gleefully reports how Duffield is braced for a backlash. I'm sure she is, over this decision to quit the party less than 100 days after elected MP for Canterbury. She'll now sit as an independent. That's really the bit I'm most intrigued by. I just think it's nothing short of outrageous that you should walk out on the party you've just been voted to represent. Should she not care a jot for the, I think it's 8,600 constituents who voted her in to represent them as a Labour MP? Is it relevant that Duffield, according to the Telegraph, is a friend of J.K. Rowling and that they are very unhappy with Labour's stance on trans people? They feel it's an attack on women. There's little love. This is the other thing. There's little love lost between Duffield and Starmer. It goes back to Starmer being pressed to state what a woman was, and he was criticism of her for stating only women can have a cervix. So it's all very sort of febrile, their relationship. But Duffield denies that row has anything to do with her resigning the whip. But if she was uncomfortable both with her leader and her party, I say again, what the hell was she thinking, standing on a Labour ticket? She could easily be accused of using Labour voters to propel her to Parliament so she could sit as an independent and needle Labour. What a swizz! What a swizz. I have to say, Douglas Carswell, I can remember this very clearly. He resigned from the Conservatives to join UKIP, I think it was in 2014. And he did the honourable thing. He resigned his seat and then he fought for it as a UKIPper and won the by-election. That's the way it should be, and I do really wonder why we don't have this written into law. First, though, I'm going to go to the chief political correspondent at the Times, Aubery Alegretti. Good morning to you, Aubery.
Good morning.
It's a new record. It's nothing to celebrate, though, is it?
No, it is obviously going to be fairly depressing reading for Keir Starmer. I suppose the sort of silver lining for him is that she's almost missed the moment of maximum damage, because if she resigned almost at this point last week during Labour conference, it would have been much more difficult for him. And actually what it's done is sort of draw some of the attention away from Conservative Party conference, where obviously they are fighting for relevance.
Yes.
But it's very frustrating for him.
Do we expect or anticipate that Parliament will ever move to address this issue?
The issue of how MPs are able to stand down like this and sort of move and become independent or move between parties. Well, it's interesting because obviously Labour were very sort of gleeful in receiving defections from Conservative MPs in the last Parliament.
Yes.
And it was notable that when Christian Wakeford crossed the floor from Conservatives to Labour, same with Natalie Elphicke, Labour wasn't calling for by-elections when that happened, so they're not really in a position to be able to claim that they think that should happen now, although obviously then we were further through the last Parliament. At this point, we are fewer than 100 days. But it's one of those things where parties don't like to legislate against it.
Is there any hint that that may change with the rump of Parliament looking at this, or is it one of those issues that both the Tories, the Labour, and presumably all the political parties can see that at some point in the future they may well benefit from such behaviour?
I think it is more the latter. And obviously Labour is in a strong enough position with the majority that it has to be able to sort of throw its weight around a little bit more, but it knows it's not going to be in power forever, and it doesn't want to sort of necessarily tie its own hands in future parliaments where it might benefit from this kind of thing. Now, it may be that I'm proved wrong, but we've heard no noises from the government that that is what they were planning to do. And, you know, there is some significant sort of constitutional reform, if you like, with the votes at 16,
Yes.
Trying to start abolishing the House of Lords. So actually, you know, there is lots of areas where Labour has said they are going to look at this stuff, but that's one topic they've shied away from.
Aubery, appreciate your insight. Aubery Alegretti there. And listening to all that was Matthew Torbett, former Labour advisor, political commentator. Always enjoyed chatting to you, Matthew. Good morning to you this Sunday. Are you as incensed by it as I am? It just feels like a complete swizz to me.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's very funny how people find their principles after winning 5 more years in Parliament.
Yes.
I think, and it's interesting, Aubery used the example of Christian Wakeford. So I helped Christian cross the floor 2.5 years ago and then went to go and work for him. And for some of us, our principles always remain. My advice to him, and it always made me very uneasy that the party didn't listen, was he should have a by-election. It's not the right thing to do. People have just voted you in based on one ticket. They should have the ability to decide whether they voted for you as a personality and as a person, or whether they voted for the party. And the reason why people don't do it is because it's normally the latter. It's very few MPs that have a true personal vote. I do think there should be some level of legislation, but I think it would be quite hard to do, which is probably why it's not been done before. Because if you're, you know, essentially bullied within your party and you go, I can't do this anymore, then it's a little bit uncomfortable, really, to then be forced to hold yourself at a by-election.
Point taken. But the thing that really irks me about this is the time frame. That it's less than 100 days, less than 12 weeks. And that, especially coming from a politician who was quite clearly, you know, unhappy with Starmer, unhappy with certain aspects of the direction of travel he was taking. You know, she was unhappy before she stood for the party, then she decides to stand for the party, and then she's gone and can, and I would imagine will be going after Labour on certain issues. So she becomes an antagonist as well. Surely, I mean, I appreciate that things can be difficult to do, and I wouldn't be maybe so fussed about this if we were talking about her resigning 100 days before a general election. But to me, it's the fact that it's happened so soon. That is just unacceptable to me.
I agree, and it's somebody that hasn't really been willing to engage, not just with the Labour Party. And the same can be said, don't get me wrong, of Keir Starmer. You know, it's notorious how isn't really willing to engage with MPs that he necessarily disagrees on. But also, this is somebody that's not willing to engage in Parliament. Rosie Duffield has not spoken in the House of Commons. She's spoken once, since May 15th, and has only voted 4 times when we've had 15 divisions. You don't see her around the building. She's, you know, got a reputation for being lazy. And I just think if this is your red line, you know, you've lived through the party having a muddled position on Brexit, and in my opinion, one of the biggest acts of self-harm this country's gone through, allegations of a leader being complicit in anti-Semitism, and you've decided some tickets to the football is your red line, despite actually taking freebies to go to the golf 2 years ago, which I'm sure other people would have to save all their life for. So, you know, I
was unaware of that. She herself has benefited from sports-related freebies.
Absolutely. I think it was the Masters.
My word.
Be corrected if I'm wrong, but 2 years ago took freebies. And, you know, it's within the rules.
Of
There's
course.
no issue with that.
But it does make her look like a staggering hypocrite.
Well, yeah, she might want to take a bit of that language out of her letter and reserve it for herself, in that opinion. But no, I think, you know, Rosie isn't someone that's wished to engage for the last few years. I don't feel she will be missed. And, you know, more power to her for the next 5 years. Hope she gets something out of it.
Matthew Talbot, pleasure talking to you this Sunday morning. Some fairly damning commentary from Matthew, which I can understand if you look again at the excoriating criticism of Starmer and the Labour Party that Rosie Duffield has offered up it's actually a resignation communique. I think the letter is due today. I mean, we had Anne of 1,000 days and now we have Rosie of fewer than 100 days.
Yeah, I think she's right. And I think it is sleazy.
Even though it's within the rules.
Yeah, the rules need changing.
Okay, but if it's within the rules, if it's within the rules, where's the sleaze?
Well, morally, it's sleazy.
Is it sleazier? Is it sleazier than the previous Prime Minister billing us taxpayers £40 million for his personal helicopter?
No, it's the same.
Okay.
Labour's supposed to be above it. But
is it? I thought they had to play by the same rules, Sandy. That's what Parliament is, isn't it?
The point is, none of us knew about all this. She didn't know at the time of the election. About
Prime Ministers being given free clothing. Prime Ministers have been given free clothing for years, forever.
Not to that. I don't believe to that extent. It was unknown. I mean, it's news to me.
Okay. I mean, it's the scale of it, I suppose, is big, but then
it's wrong. It's just all wrong.
Okay, so it's all wrong. And what about standing as a Labour MP, having thousands of people vote for you as a Labour MP and then deserting them?
Well, I think you're exaggerating that a bit, but it sounds like she's been...
So she's not deserted the people that voted for her?
Well, in a sense, perhaps she has, but it's because it wasn't known at the time of the election. Okay,
so surely the fairest thing to do then, if fairness is what it's all about, and you sound like a woman who appreciates fairness, is for her to stand again as an independent and fight a by-election. Then we won't have to have this discussion anymore.
She?
Well, because some people may say she's completely conned 8,500 voters.
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
You're exaggerating.
Okay. Well, that's we're all entitled to an opinion. But if I voted for somebody expecting them to be a Labour MP and then they changed their mind after a couple of weeks over a row that is within the rules, there's no laws broken. It's one Labour person giving gifts to another Labour person.